Okay, so in today's episode, we're going to be looking at hands. Now, hands are. I feel like they're not the most complicated thing to do, but they're still not the most simplest thing to do. I'm going to be breaking it down in a way in which you guys can understand, and also in a way in which you have repeatable shapes to follow and repeatable ideas and things that you can be thinking about. So, to start off with hands, you can break it down in threes. So, in this image here, you've got your carpals, which are 8 small bones at the top here, and then it goes into your metacarpals, then your phalanges, and then your fingers up here. So essentially you can break it down into threes. Now the same thing can be done with fingers. So when it comes to your finger, you can think about it in threes. So here I've got a drawing that I've done where I've done a circle into a cylinder into a circle into a cylinder into a circle into a cylinder. So each of these makes up one of the three. So start off with a circle, go into a cylinder, into a circle, into a cylinder, into a circle, into a cylinder, and that will make up the structure of your finger. The same way you have this ball point 1, 2, 3, and these would be the cylinders here, here, and here. And so whenever you're drawing fingers, you can start off from that idea where you've got your circle, cylinder, circle, cylinder, and this is just a crude drawing to demonstrate a point, circle, cylinder. That gives you your structure of the finger. Now all that needs to be done is for you to add some dynamism to it. So on the inner side, on the inside here, I'm just going to do curves like this, and on the outside we're just going to do dips like that. So on the inside, curve, 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 like that. And on the outside, dip, 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 right after where the circle is. And that gives you a structure that you can follow for fingers. Now, looking at the hand as a whole, you've got your thenar, which is this muscle here, which controls the thumb, flexes it in, flexes it out, like that. You've got this muscle here, which is your hypothenar here, and then you've got the inside of your palm. And so you can break this whole shape down into like an almond shape. So just to show you that, so you're going to have the wide shape here, which is going to represent the palm, the thenar and the hypothenar. And then you're going to have this almond shape up here, which is representing where the metacarpals and the phalanges are. Now let's do this hand facing this way, same way. So I'm going to break this down into 1, 2, and 3. So here we're just going to carve out a shape on this side. That's going to be our thenar, and I'm just going to carve out a shape on this side, which is going to be our hypothenar, and then the inside here is the palm. Now to the side of the femur, we're gonna follow the rule that we were following with the fingers. So because the thumb is smaller, it's just gonna be one dip and one kind of curve. So we're gonna come out from here, we're gonna curve, and we're gonna dip. And then that's just gonna come to a point. That gives us our thumb. Now on the other side, or on the upper half with the fingers, there are multiple different ways of doing this. You can even actually just draw like a shape out, but you're following the general gist of that almond shape. So we're gonna draw our furthest point closer to that point at the top, and we're just gonna shape this out in a general way. Let me rub this out a bit. So we've got our high point towards the middle. This is going to come down. So that's 1, 2, and now we just need 3 and 4. So we're going to do 3, we're going to have 4 right there, like that. And that's just giving us our general gist of like the entire shape. And then we can go into this and shape it out. So what we can do is we could actually separate this finger. So I'm going to slightly separate this finger. And I'm still trying to kind of follow that idea of curves. Not fully, but having some dynamism to it. Kind of like this. Like that. Where you've got curves on the inside, and on the outside you've got dips. And then here, kind of follow that dip kind of rule, and then we can do some general curves there. We can do some curves here, and that kind of gives us our hand shape. After that, it's more about how much detail you want in your hand. So we could do little indentations like this to represent these lines here. Which actually kind of helps give it some three-dimensionality. But yeah, that's your hand. So let's label this. You've got the phenar and the hypophenar. Now, to flip this hand in the other direction is the same sort of principle, where what you want is that almond shape, and then you can build from that almond shape. So obviously we're gonna do where the fingers start, is it's flipped. Our phenar is going to be here, so you're just going to come out from here. Remember, the outside is a dip, inside is a curve. So I've just done where our thumb is, and then with the fingers outside is a dip. And I probably won't detail these that much. I'll just give like a general gist. Can rub this side out because it's not needed, and then put some general lines down like that, which indicate like the gaps between the fingers. And something that actually helps is you can group some of them together but just separate like a finger apart, and I'll just show you that in a second. And then where that wrist is, I'm gonna have something like that, where you show like the two bumps, so like where the ulnar is, because you're showing these two bumps here. And so that's our shape from the back, where we have phenar and hypophenar. However, you can't see them because they're on the other side. And so that's like our shape from the back. Now, if we go to like a side view, something that can help is like drawing in terms of blocks and cylindrical shapes. So if we're drawing the arm, what can help is thinking about it a bit like this. So I'm gonna draw a block, and a cylinder. So got our block, and we're imagining it's going back in space like this. We've got our cylinder going back in space like this, and then we've got our block. And with the hand, like there's a dip that happens as it goes down into the hand, and so that's what we're illustrating here. And then over the top of that, we can add like a curve, and then follow that curve down, and then add a curve to this side, follow that curve up. And then to add some dynamism to it, you're just gonna follow the curves like that. And that's kind of gonna build up that hand shape. And then that will come into what we term as the hand. But I'm not gonna draw it out in this image. But this is one way to visualize it, as a block, and a cylinder from the side view. T.B. Choi has a really nice way of breaking it down, where she will think of the hand similar to like this, where you've got the hypophenar and the phenar, and then the palm. So essentially she will break the hand shape down into a curved shape like this. And this is a shape that you can use when you're drawing your hands. You can start off with this and then build the fingers off and the shapes off from that. So if I was to do that, we've got this section of the hand here. We're going to add in our thumb or our phenar. which is like this triangular shape, and then just off the side of that we want to do a curve and a dip, which gives us our thumb. So that's our thumb there. And then we can do our hypophenar on the other side, which is just another curve. And now we just need to do our fingers. So imagine you can draw out 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where our fingers are going to come out from. And so think about that rule that I told you. It's not something that you always have to follow, but it's a nice thing to follow, where you've got the curves and the dips. So on the inside we're just going to curve 1, 2, 3. On the outside we're going to dip. Oh boy, I messed it up a bit. So 1, 2, 3. On the outside we're just going to dip like that, and then we can do those, and then same again. We can do this. 1, 2, and obviously there'd be a third. I should have made more space. Dip, 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 like that. Just circle or curve that off. And then something that I've learned from Loish is that what you can do is you can just draw the thumb and the finger closest to the thumb, and then if you want, it's a stylistic thing, but what you can do is you can curve the rest of the fingers together, kind of like that, and if you want you can outline them a bit. But it's more like an animator thing, where what they do is they'll draw like the two most important fingers or things, where it's like the thumb, finger closest to the thumb, and then they'll just palm the rest off. And so that's also another stylistic thing you can do. But yeah, that gives us our hand here. Yeah, so I think that kind of covers the different ways in which you can approach hands. Essentially, to recap, what you want to remember is you want to remember to draw the almond shape. You want to remember to close off that almond shape, or close off where the fingers start. You've got your thenar, which is where your thumb attaches to, and your hypophenar on the other side, and then you can build off there. Just remember to work on using those curves, so curve on the inside because we're doing the thumb, and the dips, dip on the outside. So if you struggle with hands, one thing to do is actually just pose your hand in any kind of shape, and you can follow along to that. Now, some things to bear in mind include the ways in which hands work. So abduction, where you bring the fingers in, no, the way you bring the fingers out, and adduction, where you bring the fingers in. So let's just draw an example of adduction, because this is where you kind of separate a bit from the general almond rule. It just means like that almond shape becomes more of a fan like this. And so from that, same again, phenar where the thumb sits, hypophenar. From that, we're just gonna dip in, curve, curve, dip, like that. For the fingers, we're kind of gonna follow this, but because they're all going to be separated like this, we have to bear in mind that they're all separate. So let me just curve this, and then with the fingers, I'm just drawing like a general gist, and then I'll go in and detail them up. So I'm kind of drawing them a bit like if they were fries. Okay, so now let's add some dynamic. Let's make them look a bit more dynamic. So again, I'm going to curve on the inside. And add dips on the outside. This is how I like to make hands look dynamic. Curve, curve, dip, dip. And with that finger, I'll just curve here and curve here. And then if you want, you can add those lines across like that. And that gives us our hand spacing outward like that. Yeah. And so this would be adduction. Or no, abduction. This would be abduction where the fingers are being stretched out, and an adduction is where the fingers are coming in. So, adduction. So, to wrap things up, I'm just going to do some examples here. But I generally recommend, if you want to get to grips with this, make sure to do that thing that I said. Like, pose your hand in a way. Think about drawing where the thumb is and where the finger is first, the finger closest to the thumb, and then follow along to that. So in this example, I draw where the thumb is, draw that finger closest to the thumb, and then I'd have the rest of the fingers follow a rhythm or follow a curve. So yeah, let's draw some stuff from the book. So in this one, I'm gonna draw general shape. Got like our thumb here, fingers. I guess I've gone a bit too low. Let's just draw like the intersections. And then I'm going to put this in shadow. This is also going to be in shadow. So you're going to do that. Place where we've got bones. I'm just making sure to follow like a curve shape when I'm drawing these bones out here. Technically, this comes lower, so I should be doing it something like this. And then where that arm is, thinking about that. So that's a rough example. And then by all means you can do that. Let's do another one. And you can see actually one thing I'm trying to do is rather than draw everything individually at the start, I'm trying to think about the overall shape of what I'm looking at first. Forgot where our thumb is, so let's do something like this. Where the knuckle is, so put in knuckle 1, and I'm just going to overlap these. So knuckle 1, overlap, draw that coming in, overlap, like that. Coming in, and like a bit of an overlap here as well. Can add those curves in like that. And then if you remember that dip that happens, so we're going to curve out and then we're going to dip like this, curve out, dip. And then that is gonna have like that bone pointing out. It's gonna just curve up like this. Just gonna curve up like that. And then by all means you can just choose where our shadow is, shadow all of that out, shadow the underside of the palm. Okay, so final thoughts before I end this video. One of the key things that we're looking at where we talk about dips and curves, another way to kind of revisualize this, and probably the way I should have phrased it, is think about using your C curves and your S curves. So like with the thumb, if we had our femur here, we're going to curve in and then we're going to curve out, and that's going to create like an S curve. And then we're also going to do like an S curve here, and that will create our thumb. So I guess don't just think about dipping like this, but also think about areas where you can actually see an S curve where it's going to dip and then it's going to curve in like that. Same with the fingers, not just dip, dip, but dip, curve, dip, curve. And so try and visualize S curves rather than just dips and curves. Final thoughts. Just remember the thenar, hyperthenar, the rule of 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then think about how you can start grouping fingers together, and remember those S curves and those dips, and you should be fine. But hopefully that helps. Hopefully that's given you some ideas as to how to draw hands. If you need me to make another video on it or explain something more in detail, let me know in the comments.